what would your reasons be for getting into VR? And if you can recommend it to others.
Jorkin. Straight Jorkin. Jorkin, and by it, I mean the Gorkin. Hang on. I would recommend VR. You could cut all that. I would recommend VR for reasons of.
So I'll be interviewing Vinny today. Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate it. So I'll be asking some questions, so feel free to answer in any way that makes you feel comfortable. Keep in mind, I'll be publishing this in video form publicly, and it will be edited if I need to, so don't worry about answering perfectly on anything or making mistakes. So if you're ready, we'll begin.
Ready.
Okay, cool. So I usually start these interviews off as sort of like I do an introductory thing. I know it's probably easy to figure out how I got to know you because, you do streaming, you make content, so a lot of people end up discovering you that way, and then eventually, through watching you and stuff, I end up contributing, and we got to know each other that way as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to ask, did you... In regards to the VRChat, so we're going to go through questions about VR and then also VRChat, but I can't remember, when you first played VRChat, did you use a headset first? Did you experience it in VR or did you use desktop?
So I remember trying out VRChat years ago before I had a headset, and my headset I got in 2020. So when I tried VRChat for the first time, I just thought like, oh, this is another Second Life type situation. And I walked around and I was just talking to randos in public worlds. And this is like a very bare bones version. I think it was probably like 2018. So it was like an earlier form of VRChat, maybe even a little bit earlier. And people were like, oh, hey, Vinny. And I was like, wait, what? And then it just said, I think I'm good. Because you know what the problem was I had with VRChat in the early days was everyone was doing bits.
Oh, no.
I think, yeah, people were getting kind of like internet famous for doing a lot of bits in VRChat and then posting their footage online, which I have since done a couple times. But in the early days, I felt like, well, I couldn't really talk to anyone. I didn't really know what the point of it was because I wasn't in VR. And everyone was just doing like Know the Way or like something related to Family Guy, Peter Griffin, Family Guy, man. And so I just ducked out. I'm like, I think I'm good on VRChat. But when I got my headset, then I really understood it. And especially during the pandemic, it was a huge relief to have a way to socialize with people in a way that was kind of cool, like where you could world hop.
Mm-hmm.
But also you can actually kind of get a pretty close enough approximation of what it was like to hang out with someone. So while I tried it years before, I didn't get it until I had the headset. Only then did it make sense.
I actually I forget that you played Second Life first, and a lot of people make comparisons to that in this place, and also people make comparisons to Gmod too. I don't know, did you play Gmod when it was popular? You did? Okay.
Yeah.
What was your, I guess I'd ask I guess you kind of already answered it, what your first impression of VRChat was. Was it comparable in any way to like Gmod or Second Life when you were playing those?
Yeah. I mean, I was doing the bits in Gmod, and, I was just joining RP servers and doing a silly voice. Mm-hmm. But I also, earlier in the Gmod kind of thing, I would just jump into servers and build random stuff with people. Not to RP necessarily, but just to like talk to people while building something weird. So Gmod felt a lot more collaborative and a lot more like, let's discover these strange things. Second Life was like insane. I never really got into Second Life in any serious capacity. Second Life was always like, oh my god, everything I'm seeing, none of this is in the Bible, for one. And two, it was also me doing bits. I had a character that you know, and some of you may know. I had a character called Ralph Bluton, which was based on Ralph Pouton, and I would just go around with the Plinkett voice and look for love. And so that was my main experience with Second Life. It wasn't to meet new people and hang and talk. It was just to like gawk at how weird everything was. And eventually Ralph got recognized enough where I couldn't really use that character anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I just kind of ducked out of Second Life, and then Twitch banned it because of said non-Bible materials.
I'm actually surprised, and I'm sure this has come up too, that they haven't banned why VRChat isn't banned, because obviously those things happen in public. Like, I mean, they try to put a cap on it. But if you're brave enough to go into a public instance of VRChat, then I don't know if you've had enough of the public VRChat experience. It's not always bad, but there are enough videos.
Well, yeah, enough. I've seen a little bit, but I've mostly heard people say whatever they want to say, and but avatars, I've seen way less pornographic avatars in VRChat than I ever have in Second Life. So whatever restrictions they have on VRChat, I feel at least a little bit more effective than whatever was happening in Second Life. Mm-hmm. And also the worlds themselves just feel more we're in a Blade Runner type world, or you go to feed a duck. Second Life, it was like, welcome to my sex dungeon. Please enter. Yeah.
So I think I know, I think I sort of know the answer to this question, but is there anything that you'd say that encouraged you to get a VR headset? I know you have an Index specifically, but is there anything, any certain reasons that would have encouraged you to finally get one?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is Half-Life Alyx. It was going to happen one way or another. I was interested in VR. I had a headset. I had the Oculus DK2, which does not stand for Donkey Kong. It stands for Dev Kit 2, and it was really not great. It was rough. It made me sick. The field of vision was really narrow, and the pixels were chunky. Mm-hmm. So I had written off VR. I was like, this is just not here yet. But I got it because I wanted to see what it was about, and all I really ended up doing with it was, and it didn't even have controllers. You had to use an actual video game controller.
Yeah.
So I tried it. I tried some of the experiences. It definitely made me sick. And then I said, I'm good on VR for a while. And then Half-Life Alyx was on the horizon, and I was like, I need to play a new Half-Life game. This is very important. Mm-hmm. And I figured, what's the best one on the market? It's the Index. And I figured also, as a streamer with a relatively successful channel, it would be good for me to get into this kind of form of VR with a great game and the best headset. That way I can make videos and check out games. But I figured I'm going to be real sick. But I was for a bit, but I got through that. So.
Yeah, I'm guessing.
And then also.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Well, I mean, super hot VR, and then VRChat ended up becoming as good as experiences as I've ever played. Mm.
Yeah, it's kind of Valve had a good thing going, to start off there to launch the Index to have Half-Life Alyx was it bundled with it? I think, or did they bundle it?
I don't remember.
Could have sworn that it was, but I definitely heard that was a big reason for a lot of people jumping onto it, and they did a good. That was a good way to introduce people into it. It's definitely. Yep. I have an Index as well, and it's been good. So you definitely, when it comes to VR, your motion sickness, so that kind of dissipated eventually. If you had any motion sickness.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had the motion sickness even with the Index for even as advanced as it was. My old decrepit body just did not want to adapt. Mm-hmm. I'm joking. The truth is, though, it just I needed experience. I needed to understand what it was that this thing was. And for me, that was just kind of easing my way in and playing a little bit. Half-Life Alyx had the teleport mode, but then it had a very basic walk mode, which was very, very, very simple and slow. So that, I remember there were some early Half-Life Alyx streams where I wanted to vom, and I was definitely like, I gotta go. I'm good. I've had my fill. But that led up to VRChat, which VRChat, you know, you run around quickly if you choose the movement option. And that, you know, was a little nauseating for a bit, but then you just get used to it. Your body gets used to it. The signal from your brain is like, okay, I know what this is. I can tell you're wearing a big piece of technology on your face. You're not actually moving without moving, so you're fine. And now I think I can probably be in VR for like 2-3 hours. I can get a little fatigued depending on the thing I'm doing, but I'm mostly fine.
Oh, good to know. Good to know. I'll probably ask just as an extra thing, do you have any, since you pretty much answered the, what your first experience in VR was, but do you have any, you played, now you don't always play a lot of VR games, but you have played quite a few. Are there, outside of Half-Life Alyx, are there any other, like, any sort of genre of VR specific games outside of like VRChat that you think you like the most, utilizing the headset?
I think, and these controllers were like kind of made for shooting. Like they even have like triggers. So anything where you can actually aim and shoot like a target is fun in VR. It's more fun than I've ever had with the Wii or something like that.
It's like Pavlov.
Blade and Sorcery. Pavlov is a great example. Blade and Sorcery, which is more sword combat. I don't think a lot of games that I've played did sword and melee combat particularly amazingly, but Blade and Sorcery's newest version does it really, really well. So those experiences, and then I would say there's a game called Cosmo Dread, which is like a roguelite horror Dead Space kind of game where you go through a dark like horror spaceship. That experience is amazing in VR because with VR the potential to get the shit scared out of you is very high.
Oh yeah.
And if a game can do that really well and play with your expectations and make you think you've seen something out of the corner of your eye, that's to me a better, scarier horror experience than anything you could have on a monitor.
Yeah, I've kind of experienced that in Phasmo. I haven't played Cosmo Dread yet, but Phasmophobia definitely gave me that experience as well, where I normally wouldn't be scared, but in VR it's like, okay, I'm in the space now. Things are surrounding me as well.
I had to take my headset off one time playing Phasmo.
I remember
because
that.
I was so scared.
I remember that, yeah.
I felt terrible. I was like, what is going on? Oh, I'm just in a headset. Let me just take it off real quick. And it, yeah.
Yeah. So also answer, because I've asked this to other people too, when it comes to like experiencing VR versus like the physical space, you know, it's hard to explain what it's like to people who haven't used VR. So some people are like, oh, well, it's like going from 3D to 4D. Would you kind of like describe, well, you said you used the Oculus, so you end up using a shitty headset at first, but what was your impression of like experiencing VR, like virtual reality for the first time compared to like the physical space?
It was amazing when I finally kind of got it and when there was an experience to match the quality of the headset. Mm-hmm. So what was that game that you played with the Index that you can play to get you into VR? It was like a Portal-esque game.
Oh my god.
Lab something?
It might be, it wasn't Bone Labs, was it? No, not Bone Labs. I'm not sure.
So there was some game that I played that Valve made that helped me figure out what VR was capable of. Mm-hmm. And especially these controllers, these are very advanced controllers, and you know, I just didn't have that experience with the Oculus. So that, and then like Super Hot VR, stuff like that before I even played Half-Life Alyx made me see the potential. And it was a huge thing. It was like, you know, with the Wii, that was a big step for me where I felt like, oh, you can point at the screen and something happens, or you can swing your sword and Link swings the sword. But in VR, it's such a more visceral experience because you actually have the things in front of you. You can interact The only thing that you can't do is actually feel something you're picking up, but your brain does a real good job at tricking you that you're in that 3D space. So the Index is a great headset, and it's 5 years old already. I can't even imagine another couple years from now if they put out, say Valve in particular puts out another version of the Index, like the Deckard or whatever. It would be even more amazing, because there's stuff that you know you're in VR, but I think with even just the next step up, I can see it being even more incredible. But yeah, no, it was definitely a step up. It was kind of almost like playing Mario 64 for the first time.
Yeah.
Is the way I would describe it.
That's pretty cool. I had that experience too, because obviously, I make stuff in VR, so being able I played on desktop first, and then when I finally got a headset and was able to like go to the stuff that I made in VR, I'm like, holy shit, like I'm able to like,
You created that.
and be in that world.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask some questions about socialization in VR, and obviously, no, you don't use VRC as much as some other people we know, and maybe me. But you have been in enough to kind of socialize with people, I think. So when it comes to socialization in the physical space, so I'm going to ask a little physical space. Just answer whatever you're comfortable with. You don't have to give too many details. When it comes to socializing in reality, how would you describe yourself and your interactions with others? And how does that translate to like when you're interacting with people in text and voice, like the internet?
Oh, that's interesting. It's changed over the years. I mean, I was a lot more reserved. I was a lot more shy. I still am, but it depends on where I'm at. If I'm at a bar and I don't know anyone, I'm just gonna be keeping to myself. But if I'm at a video game convention where people know me, I can be a little more assertive. I can be a little bit more, like I can joke around more and kind of have some confidence. However, if I'm at that same convention and there's too many people that know me, I kind of tend to retreat again. So every situation is different. Text and voice is a little different too. Text, I used to be a lot more, in the early days of the internet, I was like on the computer constantly, and I was always in like chat rooms and socializing with friends, and then I was able to just kind of, and I would be more unrestricted and less shy. These days, I'm typing a whole lot less, so for me, it's kind of similar to how I am in real life. I'm an introvert by nature that does extroverted stuff, so I need my recharge time, I need my space. Even in VR, VR is amazing because when I'm with a group, like when we've done collabs and when we've had our friends in VR, it's cool to just run around and find stuff in worlds, and you can become a different avatar. You can just kind of be silly, and you can do stuff without getting tired.
Yeah.
So it's, in that sense, it's much more unrestricted. But I think the older I get, the more I tend to just kind of meet these things somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
So I'm fairly the same person that you would say, like you've met me in real life now at TMG. So I'm similar to how I am on the internet, I guess, right?
Yeah. That's a lot of people I interviewed. Everyone is different, because some people are quite different in real life than they are on the internet, and some people that I've interviewed are pretty much the same all across the board. There's no differences, even in when they're socializing as well. So that's perfectly understandable.
Yeah, I had to think about that too. I wasn't sure, and then I realized, I think it's about the same. When I'm streaming, it's a slightly elevated, heightened version of myself. And if I'm streaming VR, it's the same thing. It's a little bit more, it's me, but a little bit more to say silly things or to just kind of be on stream, and entertain a little bit. But normally I'm pretty reserved. I'm pretty chill.
Yeah, obviously you do, and it's something I've been experiencing too, and I have to tell people when I'm streaming as well, is that you have an outlet through streaming. You do have an outlet to talk. Like, say if you're not talking much during the day, you're more reserved, or you're keeping to yourself, right, throughout the day, maybe not socializing as much, but when you stream, that's your time to actually maybe socialize with people that are watching with you or are talking about whatever you want. You know, you get it out all there, then after you're done, you just, okay, it's time to recharge, pretty much.
Yep, I agree with that 100%. Yeah, I got my goofball time in with the stream, and then I'm happy to be alone for a while and, you know, write some music, play guitar, go for a walk, feed a duck.
Yeah. I mean, it also provides opportunities, like, for you, like, say if you don't have time to maybe meet up with others or socialize outside of the stream stuff, that also provides an opportunity to say, hey, I'm doing a collab with people or playing with these guys, so that can be your time to also sort of hit a bunch of things at once and also socialize with people that you know as well. Doing many
yeah,
things at
and
once.
especially when you're... It helps to do a bunch of things like that, because also my social circle has expanded so much from when I started streaming or when I started using VR, and it's a matter of, well, you know, I might not be able to like hang out with everybody, but once in a while a collab is nice, or even once in a while if we hop in VR and watch a movie or just you know, spend some time bullshitting. It doesn't happen a lot, but I enjoy those nights. Those are fun, and it's a good way to get everyone together in a facsimile of a real physical space.
Yeah, especially when it's, I mean, you don't have to, I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this with conventions and stuff, you know, travel. Even people who have to fly over to conventions, it can be expensive and a little exhausting to constantly do physical meetups.
Yup. Yes, it can. And then I just can't meet up with people that I would like to, because it's just too tough. But VRChat provides that outlet in an interesting way, and it's fun because, again, you can just, if you're bored of talking, let's go world hop, let's go find a strange world. It's fun.
Yeah, it provides a pretty interesting way to do that. You already kind of answered this. You can elaborate if you want, but and of course you don't use VRC, like a social platform like VRC, to socialize as much as some people. But would you say using VR has changed the way you interact with others compared to interacting in the physical space and the internet before virtual reality? I can't imagine with you it's changed, but you can answer if you want.
Only maybe to the smallest degree, just because I can do stuff like this. And that just is kind of fun and funny. Whereas, you know, at most other places that I've socialized, you don't have the ability to gesture. You don't have the ability to run away from people if, you know, like as a joke. I mean, there's a lot of physical comedy that you can do in VRC. But in terms of the way I actually interact with people, it's about the same. Yeah, I mean, I kind of have been around on the internet for a long time, and I'm more or less stuck in my ways. So, but I would be lying if I said VRC wasn't one of the most fun ways to actually interact with people, just because of how I could turn into a bird right now. Where else can you do that?
Yeah, that's perfectly understandable. And of course you've gotten time compared to, I guess, some people I interviewed. You've definitely had time to adjust to, like, you know, you have a lot of people that watch you, and so you've had time to like adjust to socializing with people or even to an audience that big. But I guess maybe for some people I've interviewed or some people out there, they might be super introverted or not used to socialization as much, so they may utilize like VR, for example, to gradually get more comfortable with that, depending on the situation.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. I think the ability for people to express themselves in a way that makes them comfortable, or to, you know, step outside of who they are and become something they want to be, or even just to mess around and, like, I know that there's a lot of different facets to VRChat and VR in general for people, whether it be a comedic outlet or there's an intimacy aspect of it that I know people engage in. I think, you know, finding that balance between real life and having it be a positive is very possible. I think people have the opportunity to do some really cool stuff that they would be too afraid to do. And I think that's cool, because maybe it'll have people step out of their shell and gradually become more comfortable going out, or even just meeting new friends. So I really like that this exists for people. But of course, I mean, there are people who are in VRChat a lot, and I wonder if that also has a negative effect on some. And that's just stuff that we're gonna have to figure out in years. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of psychological aspects to this that we haven't discovered yet.
Yeah, there's definitely a balance, especially when people use it to just do a bunch of things, may use it to cope with stuff as well. Like you said, there's many different layers, so it's got its positives and it also has its negatives. On that topic, though, this is another question I've been asking people. Did you use VRChat during the pandemic, and did it help you cope with any of the stuff going on at all? Because at that time, I think it exploded in popularity. There were a lot of people using it during that time.
I mean, to me, that was like a lifeline in a way. VRChat during the pandemic was like huge, and it was a way for... We didn't know how long we were going to be stuck in the house. I mean, there was just so much confusion about everything. And I remember spending New Year's Eve in VRChat that year. And that was neat because it gave me an opportunity to, be around friends, or people I didn't even know really and just met that night. And even just have a drink and just say, hey, Happy New Year. And it was cool. And so I really liked that. And it got me through the pandemic in a way that I didn't feel as bad about being stuck in the house. I mean, I still made my opportunities to go out. I tried to go for walks and just kind of be out. But you still need people. As an introvert, even I still need socialization. I still need to talk to people.
Yes.
And VRChat was a huge... I mean, I had the index for Half-Life Alyx, but then after I finished Half-Life Alyx and the pandemic was in full swing, it was like, oh, this is something I can use to socialize and to actually have a social life during this weird time, and it was great.
I want to ask on that note too, about the pandemic happening, and experiencing things in real life. Since you live you're in a place that has pretty big cities and stuff, did you get the experience when you went out walking, say in a downtown area? Because I actually experienced this. Did you get to experience things areas that are normally extremely busy just being completely dead? Did you have that experience, and was it surreal for you? Because I did.
Yeah, I drove through Times Square and there was 2 cars on the road and maybe, I don't know, 30 people. And I took video footage of that, and it was just weird. I'm sure a lot of people took footage of that, but that was my attempt to, just see what it would be like. Because maybe that opportunity would have never come back, so I just took it, and I said, let me go for a drive. Yeah, it was weird. And I mean, just being able to drive at 5 p.m. to New York City and then back with no traffic. It was bizarre. And then same for walks too. Yeah, it was weird. Same thing happened with you? You went for walks in crowded spaces or prior crowded spaces?
Oh yeah. Since I lived I don't live in Seattle, but I live in the vicinity of, and obviously those places get pretty busy. So when I did go out, I'm places that I'm so used to being having a lot of activity and everything, just walking down and just it's it's almost like an introvert's paradise. I mean, that sounds horrible, but just walking and having the city or this area to yourself and no one's out, and just it's not as busy. It was just kind of it was so surreal to experience that.
Yeah, agree.
So I know that you don't. I'm gonna bring this up a lot because a lot of these questions apply to people who probably use VR or VRChat more. In your interactions with people that have been using. When you use VR, have you noticed any changes in other people, socially, in their behavior or the way they socialize from the time they started using VR up until now? Did you notice they maybe get influenced by VR socially in your observations of others?
I don't know if I have as much experience observing, but I've seen people get more comfortable. Mm-hmm. I've seen people who started doing VR a little bit more reserved and then become more outspoken. I think Among Us VR, whether it be the VRChat version or the Among Us game, was an interesting example of that because, you play a few rounds of that even with brand new people and you get more comfortable, and then people just kind of act however they want. And there were times where I would be in lobbies for something like that, and I would even like just go run off into a corner. And it's funny because people, yeah, and I had people assuming like, oh, he's shy or he's socially awkward right now. And it's like, well, to a degree, but it was real loud.
Yes.
So I just wanted to get away from the noise. But also there is some degree of that too. Like if I'm in a group of people where I know one or two other people and everyone is making content and being the main character of their life and their stream, yeah, I'm not going to be the Vinny Vinesauce that you might know me as. Like I might be a little more chill and wait for my moments and see what the energy is, because I don't also always love being the center of attention. Sometimes I do, for sure, but then, learning where your place is in a group is important. And I figured that out live on stream a couple times. So that's not really a direct answer to your question. I mean, it is in a roundabout way, but that's one observation I have.
Yeah, I can. I guess the removal of the physical space too. Sometimes it can be a positive thing because people may feel it makes it more safer to interact with people when they don't have to worry about like the physical body or their body language as much. And other ways, people just kind of like get too up close, like because they forget like, oh well, there's a person here, but they forget that that's an actual person. So they like their awareness of when you would normally have boundaries in the physical space. Sometimes people will cross those a little too much or be like
this, right?
Yeah. Pretty much.
That's just this is the boundary crossing avatar, but even I get a little weird when someone is like directly in my space in VR. It's just, I think your brain just translates it as such, and even though they're not right there next to you in real life, you can't help but feel that's the case. Especially if it's loud.
Oh yeah.
I don't do with like loud people. That's not my favorite.
I think that's one thing. It was actually, since you brought up Among Us, that was something that was brought up. The difference between the VR app and then the one in VRChat, because at least VRChat has taken those things into consideration. So you have things like earmuff mode, where you can like kind of silence if there's too many people in the room. You have proximity, so it's a little bit better. But when you play stuff like Among Us VR, you have a bunch of voices that are just feel like they're on top of each other, like in a Discord call, and it can get overwhelming as well.
Yeah, and that's also years of iteration and taking community feedback into consideration. Whereas, Among Us VR, it's just whatever it is. And I haven't played it in a while, but I'm assuming it's probably similar. But VRChat has like, some of the quality of life stuff I've seen since I started playing it. It's been incredible. Just to make sure that you have the experience you want. Like, even if you don't really want to interact with people and just explore, you can do that. Or if you're in a giant group, you can make it manageable. So stuff like that is important.
Yeah, I agree. This is also a question. I don't know if it would apply to you. However, it does relate to self-expression in VRChat, so you might be able to answer it. Now, about identity or the sense of self or self-expression in the VR space, do you feel like time in the VR, in like places like VRChat or VR social spaces, have influenced or changed things about you, or allowed you to explore yourself in a way that's different from the physical space?
I don't think I fall into that category as much. I know that I was mentioning something like that briefly earlier about people being able to step outside themselves. For me, it's a little bit less so, especially because I've streamed it a lot. And for me, it's just kind of more about being a goofball. Mm-hmm. And I have definitely found ways to be more obnoxious in VRChat. And I mean, I commissioned this avatar because I thought this was an old BRB, and it's just amazing. So I stuff like this is more for fun for me. So I wouldn't say it's had like a particularly large impact on my sense of self or my psyche or anything like that. But on the occasions that I was either streaming it or just chilling, just relaxing, just the ability to, be goofy for a night with friends is a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely had that experience as well. It's interesting how people utilize it for different purposes, whether to just have fun or to help themselves or get better acquainted with people or help in socialization. It's got many different uses. Okay, let me see. Got a few more questions here. So on that note, what would be your opinion on VR being used for like therapeutic purposes or for mental health purposes?
I could see it happening. I don't know what that would entail. Maybe meditation help. I could see it being used for, what's it called? There's a type of therapy where you follow a light and a sound.
Oh,
I forget the name of it.
I don't remember it. I do know that there are comparisons to what is it called? There is like guided imagery as well. Things where you have to like immerse yourself by watching a video or music or things like that in a therapy space. That's a form of therapy too, so it could be comparable. Like when in this, you can actually just fully immerse yourself in an environment to help cope with stuff.
Yeah, in that sense, I can see it being used and being helpful, especially if, say, you live in a spot where you don't have a lot of room, or there's a lot of memories that you don't want to relive too frequently, or you just need a way to get out of the house, but you don't have, your immune system is compromised. I can think of a million different ways in which being in, again, a facsimile of a physical space, and it's a really for those that don't actually do VR, it's really convincing, especially if you're in a decent headset and you have like in this case right now, there's no lag between my vision and what I see, like the headset. It's really convincing. So I could definitely see it being used for therapy. I'm sure there's already some therapy stuff available, but I could see it more being used in the future, especially if the bulk of these headsets ever comes down and it becomes a much more feasible thing for people to just have like a pair of glasses on the counter they could put on and maybe even just use their hands as a controller, which is more and more a thing these days. The controller is becoming less of a thing I've seen, but I think once the accessibility of VR becomes a little bit higher, the cost a little lower, and the technology just a little bit more convincing, I can see a world where almost everyone has one and can use it to relax, to escape, and to just like go, put a pair of glasses on before bed and just meditate, listen to music, and escape. And especially if we end up in a future like this, where like a dystopian, like you live in like a New York City closet that's like, $2,000 a month for a tiny little amount of space. VR is going to help people cope with that.
Oh God. Yeah, you're not the first one that's brought up that, because I know it feels kind of surreal too that we're sort of, branching off into different, like, there's a lot of like sci-fi novels and movies that try to like provide maybe a prediction or maybe an example of what the future could be, and it seems like we're kind of meeting a lot of those in like various points, but not like one specific direction. So like it's been like a weird mix of like idiocracy. Like I can see maybe we're getting close to. I can't imagine like a Blade Runner. Who knows? Who knows what things?
No,
will
I mean,
up,
we've got time before it hits Blade Runner, but we're definitely in a mix of Amused to Death and 1984, a little bit of Idiocracy, yeah. But like every dystopia thing I've read, you're right. It seems like we've taken like a little bit from each one, and we ended up. I mean, listen, the year is 2024. We don't have flying cars. I mean, I guess we also don't have acid rain, so that's good.
yeah, it's
But yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Who knows?
All right, so the final question. If you could recommend use of VR to others, you can provide gaming too, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like for gaming reasons. What would your reasons be for getting into VR? And if you can recommend it to others.
I would recommend VR for reasons of just the ability to actually get out of your house without leaving your house. That's been kind of cool. I have a friend who ended up getting a Quest 2 just for VRChat because their friends were in VRChat. And I don't think they used it a ton. I think they used it a couple years ago, whenever it was, a year and a half ago, just for like 5 or 6 times, and just to see what the novelty of it was. But so for some people it won't stick. But the idea of socialization in VR and meeting new friends, and VRChat has become such a platform where there's so many experiences in one thing. You know, there's little mini game areas where you can shoot, you can feed ducks, you can explore, you can be on a giant pizza. There's a lot of things you can do in just VRChat, which to me justifies the purchase.
Rat videos, rat music videos, and in VR as well.
Right, so that's a thing I'm sure you know, some people know about, but if they don't, I actually hired Jackal and a number of friends. Well, I say hired, but you know, they helped, and they became rats for me. And then I just directed a music video starring rats in VRChat, and the video was for a song that was a silly like rat song, but it was a very successful video. I would say it was one of our most successful, even though it was like an April Fool's kind of thing. People were very excited about it because it was like, oh wow, how did he do this? Oh, it was in VRChat. And it's like I actually directed people, like, okay, you rat over there, can you do a flip? Or can you just stand a little closer? And it was fun. It was amazing, actually. That allowed me to live a little bit of a fantasy of mine of being a director. And I got to do it in VR with the rats. It was great. So there's that as a recommendation just for VRChat alone. But obviously gaming is great. And I've talked about it on my stream, and I won't get too into it, but I feel like the VR market has been cannibalized a little bit because of greed and fragmentation, and it ended up becoming really sad that, you know, there was like a huge opportunity for VR, and then these companies were like, no, we have an exclusive store, no, we have an exclusive device, we have an exclusive this. That said, there's still some amazing experiences, and if you're coming into VR fresh and you haven't played any of the games, there's a ton of great ones. Hundreds of hours, easy. So I would say VRChat and socialization is still my number one, but then number 2 would be all the great games. And who knows if it'll stick, but for some people it will, and it'll become a lifelong hobby, I feel.
Yeah, it will be nice to see if it actually things, you know, gradually prove it. I think it's going to take a while, and the companies definitely need to learn from their mistakes when it comes to trying to market games and making things exclusive. Exclusivity is always a hot issue when it comes to games in general.
Yeah.
I think more accessibility is better than trying to restrict it to very specific devices. I'm sure you've seen, just to bring it up, maybe PlayStation is finally fucking learning, but they're actually opening their headset for use with Steam VR as well, so now people should be able to have more access to games that way as well, and not buy a PS5 or anything like that, just to be able to access it.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, Sony has always been pretty arrogant about that stuff anyway. I mean, a lot of these companies, a lot of the video game companies get very arrogant until there's a bit of a crisis mode. Definitely not just Sony. But, however, I think that's a nice thing, that their headset can be used for more. I want to play Resident Evil 4 VR. I don't think that's available yet. In maybe a roundabout way it is, but just as a way to go on Steam and just click download and play it, I would really like that. And until that could happen, that's a shame. But if Sony is taking the steps to say, hey, we have this headset that we worked hard on, and we want people to use it however they want, whether it be for gaming, socialization, or straight jorking, whatever the case may be. It should be, the option should be available. So hopefully they're learning.
Yeah, more, like I said, more things being more accessible is better, because, you know, it's hard to just being able to have to buy, oh, I gotta buy this thing, and I gotta buy this thing and this thing just to be able to play the games that you want to play, you know. Hopefully things will get better.
It's expensive.
Yes, it can be. All right, that is the end of the interview. Thank you for joining me today, Vinny. I really appreciate it. And I hope people will appreciate your feedback on this as well. I've got a bunch of other people I've interviewed, so I'm sure your input today will be appreciated. And thank you again.
Well, thank you for being my friend, and thank you for helping me over the years, and thank you for the interview. This was great.
All right. Thank you. I gotta wait for it. There we go.
You're good.
All right.
Let's shake
We're
on it.
virtual shake.
Yeah.
All right. If you like this video project and would like to reach out for an interview yourself, feel free to contact me here on the various social platforms that I'm on, and I'll be happy to set one up. Thank you again for watching. I appreciate it.